Hello and welcome to The Den. My name is Eric and it is Saturday. This week's series of videos is all about education. So I'm here to teach you all a little bit about something that I know. Copyright. Let me preface this by saying I am not an attorney. I am not an expert in this matter. But there are people who are attorneys in copyright, patent, and trademark law. And if you have a legal question, please go and ask them. So the first thing that you need to understand about copyright is that it's a compound word. Copy and right. And those two words together mean something very specific. Copying, which is the reproduction of a work, and the right, which is a privilege to use that work. Everything that we see is the work of an individual human being. Sometimes it's a collective, sometimes it's a company, but somebody pushed the button on that camera. Somebody wrote that book. Somebody is behind that work. And that person has rights under the law to determine who gets to use that work. So you can think of copyright as any other kind of right that's enshrined in the Constitution. And that's specifically something that's actually in the Constitution proper, not in an amendment. So everything that you see that's out there in the world is something that was made by a human being. Somebody took it upon themselves to make a picture, or a video, or a song, and that person has the right to sell their work, or give it away, as they so choose. But it is their right to determine who can sell that work, share that work, reproduce that work, or give it away, or whatever. That's their right. Copyright law allows any creator to control the reproduction of their work. That way, this gives them kind of control over the amount of supply versus the amount of demand. And when you control the supply of a product, that affects the economics and the way that you can sell your product. So under copyright law, an individual has the right to sell their item themselves. They have the rights to sell their rights to other parties. They have the right to enforce their copyright in the event that somebody reproduces something without their permission, and they have the right to go to court and get restitution for lost wages when somebody reproduces something that was not approved. So copying, reproducing a work, is part of the publishing industry, right? They produce a supply of those objects, and then they send them out to be sold based on the amount of demand that comes back from the general public. This is true whether you're selling widgets or whether you're selling books. This is true whether you're selling music or selling movies. All of these things have a limited amount of products because up until fairly recently, we were actually making physical products. We were making things like films in canisters or specific CDs or tapes or whatever that were sold in stores that you had to physically go and get a physical object and bring it home. But those days are over. We currently live in a world where we have at our disposal unlimited reproduction capabilities. Thanks to the advent of the internet, the kinds of supply and control chains that we used to have, where we had physical objects, were completely thrown out the window. Because when you create a digital product and you put it on the internet, everyone in the universe can see it. But when you have an infinite supply, how does that affect the economics? That's actually a really great question, and I strongly encourage you to read this article called "The Sky is Rising" about how the advent of the internet and digital music has actually made the music industry a lot more successful. So how long does copyright last? When our founding fathers wrote the Constitution, they put the copyright should only last about 28 years. So 28 years means things that were produced prior to 1986 would be publicly accessible for general use. But that's not the case anymore. Over the years since the Constitution was originally written, copyright law has been amended and amended and amended and amended until today, under the current copyright protections, the copyright will extend for the entire duration of an author's life, plus an additional 70 years after the author is dead. This effectively makes copyright last for well over 100 years, so things that are created within any one individual's lifetime will never be accessible to them. If you want to know more about this, I would encourage you to watch this video by CGP Grey called Copyright Forever Minus One Day. Now, forgetting about the fact that now copyright is really, really, really long, what happens when copyright eventually does lapse? Because everything will eventually hit the wall. When copyright lapses, an item becomes accessible for general use. We call this the public domain. The public domain means that an item can be reused, remixed, completely altered in new and exciting ways, and all of the characters and contents become public usable products. This is why we can see things like Pride and Prejudice and Zombies and Sense and Sensibility and Sea Monsters, or to see New Adventures of Sherlock Holmes on the BBC with Benedict Cumberbatch, because these characters are in the public domain. Anyone is free to use them, and they don't have to pay anyone a dime. Having items that are accessible for public use, or having them in the public domain, means that there's more pop culture to play with. There's a lot more opportunity for people to take from the past, remix it, and bring it into the future. So some creators have decided to push back against this encroaching wall of copyright. They have decided to create entirely new licensing and rights structures, and some people have even decided to just put their works directly into the public domain as they are. Creative Commons is one of the new licensing structures that you really should take a look at. Under Creative Commons licensing, people are giving others the permission to use their works in new and exciting ways. And you can check out all the different variations of how people can use their things directly on the products themselves. So even under our current law, there are actually exceptions that are granted for individuals who need to copy works, whether for their own personal use or for the use in academic study, so that we don't actually impede progress by preventing other people from working with our works. So these are some of the exceptions under which you could be granted a copyright exemption. So whether you're using your work in an academic setting where it needs to be accessible to a number of students, and there's a limited licensing agreement that's provided to the school. It could be that you are a critic of a work and you are using the information about that work in a critical context in order to review it and share a different side of information with the public. Or you could be criticizing that work by satiring or parodizing that work. And all of these are very common fair use exemptions. So what are some of the common things that you can do legally and not be in violation of copyright? So currently we have technologies that allow us to copy digital media from one source to another. So you can take a CD that you bought at a store, put it into your computer, and pull the songs off of that CD and put them into your iPod. That is a completely legal transfer of data from your CD to your iTunes to your iPod, and nobody's going to bat an eye. You can take the music that you have stored in your hard drive, and you can create a mix CD and give it to a friend of yours. That's also not a problem. We've been sharing music and other files with each other for a long time, and courts have consistently said, yes, the reproduction of music for an individual or for a student is totally fine. That's not a problem. Where you run into problems is when you start to sell those CDs to other people. So you can't rip a CD, then burn a new CD and another and another and another and another and go out on a street corner and sell them. That is completely illegal. You also can't rip your CD and then put the entirety of that CD online for other people to download. That is also a violation of copyright, and we had a big, huge court case against Napster for that very reason. Alright, 2 things that I want to say about stuff that I have seen online that is completely, grossly ignorant. I have to share it. This phrase, copyright not intended. We know that you don't own this work. It's clear. You're Joe2575 on YouTube. You didn't make this movie. You're not Paramount Pictures. You don't have the right to put that movie online. Just because you say copyright not intended doesn't mean that you're not violating copyright. All right? The other big thing that I see happening all the time is I found it on Google image search, so doesn't that mean that it's free to use? No. No, no, no. Google image search is a search engine. They pull pictures that people have put on the web. People who made pictures. And people who put those pictures up on the web are the people, usually, who have the right to do so, because they're the ones who created them in the first place. So when you pull a picture from Google image search, unless you know specifically what the rights are for that individual image, you just have to assume that somebody owns the copyright to it. There's probably not a single digital image out there today that doesn't belong to somebody. And let me tell you, if you want to see copyright violations galore, just go to Tumblr. Everybody on Tumblr is violating copyright non-stop. It is a fucking Wild West show out there on Tumblr. I hope you liked this video. If you did like this video, please go down here to this little thumbs up button and give me a thumbs up on this video. If you have a question, please go down into the comments section here on YouTube or on Facebook and leave us a comment or a question. I'd be more than happy to try and answer what questions you have. And if you want to follow Men of the Den, you can follow us on all of these channels. You can follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Tumblr. And our Tumblr is all legit, people. Thank you. So please do like us, join all of our things, and I hope to see you all next week here on Men of the Den. Make sure you check in tomorrow on Sunday to hear from Spencer James Spence and see what he has to teach you tomorrow. Cheers! And one last thing, big shout out to LeVar Burton for raising millions of dollars for Reading Rainbow. Hooray! Reading Rainbow is one of my favorite things from childhood, and I can't wait to see what they get to do with all of the Reading Rainbow stuff and putting it all online. It's super exciting. So congratulations. If you haven't donated to the Kickstarter for Reading Rainbow, I'm going to put a link down to that in the crotch too. So please go donate to Reading Rainbow.